Welcome back to the program. Great to have you with us. Of course, you can subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast, anywhere. Spotify, Apple. I don't care if you listen or you watch. Don't care as long as you do something with this podcast. And big thank you to everybody that has taken the time to watch and listen so far and give some great feedback. And we'll get to where we need to be as long as we keep doing this every week, which is what we're doing. So let's start with the New York Mets. Phenomenal story, fascinating team. They make a bunch of changes after the 2025 disappointing offseason. Um, going into the season, they signed Juan Soto, of course, to that giant contract. Um, and they just didn't get the results that obviously the Mets fans wanted, right? So the first step that they take, I haven't seen this. Usually, when coaching staffs get fired, everybody goes. Head coach in football, the coordinators go, the defensive line coach goes. You might have a couple guys that stay on, but it's really rare. Hockey, you fire a head coach, you get an interim coach, maybe you call a couple guys up as the D coaches, forward coaches from the minors, but usually if you're cleaning the staff out, you clean them out. You just clean them out. Um, Carlos Mendoza, going into the final year of his contract, was saved after John Gibbons, Mike Sarba, Eric Chavez, Jeremy Hefner were all fired. Now, Steve Cohen, the owner, of course, pays more in luxury tax than God, said somebody needed to pay for this disappointment. And between him and David Stearns, they settled on the coaching staff. One other thought, which I thought was kind of interesting, is Eric Chavez, of course, was one of the former hitting coaches, and he was on a podcast talking about his other co-coach, Jeremy Barnes, how they were co-hitting coaches, and the messaging was different, and guys were just getting frustrated. That's a disaster. That's just a mess. You need clarity. Obviously, you saw how well clear communication worked with the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, right? So this is the opposite of that. They just had people who, um, on the coaching staff, were not on the same page. Um, to me, if you're the manager or Gibby, I mean, some of this falls on him too. You need to make sure everybody gets on the same page. That's all. And then we learned about rumors of a rift between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. Obviously, Lindor, the legendary Cooperstown at this point, worthy shortstop. Um, I mean that in the kindest way because you all know how I feel about Cooperstown. There was a rift. They don't like each other, right? And Lindor blows up on Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil gets traded. And then the Mets get Marcus Semien. More on that in a minute. And Stearns, of course, in this article here on Mets on SI, which again is now um, everybody and their uncle can write for SI. So I'm not being mean. It's just a fact. Just stating the fact that the two guys that want to win, they'll figure it out. They'll get along. Who cares if they hate each other? Again, opposite of the Toronto Blue Jays, where the majority of the team got along and liked each other and played for each other. This is one of the things that I'm kind of surprised has not taken over the Los Angeles Dodgers yet. You know, when you got guys like Blake Snell and so on and so forth. The problem is with the Dodgers, you look at a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, who's a phenomenal clubhouse guy and contributes on the field. Otani, really good clubhouse guy, most talented guy in the world. You got Yamamoto, who is just a machine, and Will Smith, of course, the catcher. Not a lot of ego there, but at some point, I'll be surprised if some of that trickled in the Dodgers clubhouse at some point. But you got two big, well paid guys, two big egos not getting along. So again, that's not going to help your team move forward, right? But there was another thing. Of course, it was Brandon Nimmo. So for those of you who don't remember, Brandon Nimmo was the outfielder, center fielder for the Mets. I decided I think they moved him to the corners, but that's neither here nor there. It was a pretty big contract. Nimmo was traded. Obviously, you see him in the Rangers hat for Marcus Semien because he was a guy that was not really well liked. Um, didn't like to take batting practice before games. Um, didn't agree with Francisco Lindor. He was good with the media, and he would say the right things. But here's the thing about Nimmo: he was one of those guys in team meetings that wouldn't shut up. He would just be like talking and talking and talking. And unfortunately, one of the things that kind of happened is when you're that guy who doesn't take batting practice, that wants to do things on his schedule, your teammates kind of look at that and go, huh, that's not cool because again, lots of stuff happens around the cage, right? You're always, you're looking at somebody's swing, you're having conversations. You talk about last night's game, you talk about the pitcher you're facing. There's a lot happens there. So if you're not going to take batting practice, that's not going to set well with your teammates. And the Mets decided, well, we're getting rid of McNeil. Texas is looking to get rid of Simeon or Seager because, well, shit, they don't like each other. And let's trade Nimmo for Simeon and see what happens. Well, that happens. How about that? But another issue that the Mets kind of ran into is Pete Alonso. Alonso, the polar bear, was their big first baseman, big time slugger. And he takes that 5-year deal with the Royals, right? He kind of played, him and Scott Boras, kind of played around last year. They waited till the last minute. Um, he signed a deal with the opt-outs. He takes the opt-out, of course, and signs for the 5 and 150, right? So he's gone, right? They didn't want him back. They figured they can replace him. Offensively, defensively, he wasn't great, but he wasn't going to kill them. He showed up, he plays every day, right? Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos, two guys that are still highly regarded, but I think they've lost their luster a little bit. They're not going to take over Pete Alonso, so who is, right? So you bring in a guy like Jorge Polanco, who has never played at first base in his life. There's a theme here. Jorge Polanco has never played first base. You're going to move Brett Beatty around to the outfield. And yeah, there's that. But hey, you know what else we're going to do? We're going to give Bo Bichette lots of money. We're going to take him away from the Phillies. We're going to take him away from the Blue Jays. We're going to give him $42 million. And again, we can debate this to the cows go home. If Bo Bichette was a $40 million a year player, 42 to be exact, I would say 30. I'd say 35 comfortably. 42 is insane. Now, for you Mets fans that are very concerned as I continuously play this play, you can see here the first baseman dropped the ball. That's not on Bichette. If you're worried about Bo playing third in the arm strength and whatnot, here's what I want you to take solace in. This is one of the hardest working guys in the game. This guy is going to work his ass off at trying to learn third base. So I joke on Blue Jays Breakfast that he's going to be a Gold Glover, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but this guy will be fine. He's not going to be great. He's not going to be Scott Rowland, but he's going to be just fine considering what he's going to do for you with his bat. Okay, so don't worry about that. The thing you have to worry about is who's playing first. Who's on first? Jorge Polanco, Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos. They're not Vladdy Guerrero. They're not going to pick stuff out of the dirt. So that's going to be addressed. As a first baseman, a defensive specialist, I can tell you first base defense is important. You can steal a lot of outs with a good first baseman, but you can lose a lot of outs, give up a lot more runs with a guy who can't pick it in the dirt, doesn't help the guy at short. You know what I mean? Vladdy Guerrero, I'm going to be honest, probably the best defensive first baseman in baseball. You know, I joke that he's a ground ball machine, but man, he can pick it and he can make plays that nobody else can make. As we take a little look around their depth chart, one time with this Nolan McLean, I mean, he's a prospect the Mets are high on. Going to the World Baseball Classic Team USA, they get Sean Manaea back. Clay Holmes is in the rotation. Jonah Tong from Markham, Ontario, another guy to keep an eye on, probably would be the first call up if there's an injury. Bear with me. Let's see their bullpen's kind of interesting. They signed Devin Williams from the Yankees, formerly of the Brewers. There was a relationship there with David Stearns. They bring in Luke Weaver, of course, who was played for the Yankees last year, kind of lost it for sure in the second half. I like this signing of AJ Minter, lefty. That's going to be big for them when they play the Dodgers or they play Kyle Schwarber. I mean, obviously, and Bryce Harper. So you're going to play a lot of games against the Phillies. The other guys in here, I'm not overly excited about. So you don't have a true ninth inning guy in here. You know, if I was, I'd be concerned about this if I was a Mets fan right now. You don't have a closer. You don't have Edwin Diaz. So, and this is the other thing. The Edwin Diaz's in the game are few and far between. You know, you're starting to see a bit of a divide. You're starting to see elite closers and then guys that are just going to pitch in the ninth inning due to matchups. The Blue Jays are a perfect example of this with Jeff Hoffman and all the guys that they have. They don't have a closer. Makes me wonder if closers are leaving the game. You know what I mean? I don't know. Obviously, Francisco Alvarez is going to be back after playing in the minors for a bit of last year. Talked about Polanco. Beatty's going to be a utility guy, so he's probably going to step into that Jeff McNeil role. Vientos was very highly regarded. Can play some third, play some first. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. If Bichette's defense does not go well at third base, do you see Beatty and Vientos kind of taking turns when Bichette's the designated hitter, right? So a lot to consider there. Second base, Marcus Semien is going to be there. Ronnie Mauricio is on the bench. Semien is getting older, so that whole 162 game routine, might go by a little bit by the wayside. Um, be curious to see if Semien can find the power bat. You know, if I was Mendoza, I'd be probably batting Semien between Soto and Bichette. That's what I would do. And if it doesn't pan out, then do whatever you want to do. But that's what I would do. We talked about Bo Bichette wearing his former number 19, playing third base. We also have Vidal Brujan. Be curious to see if he makes their roster. They're going to move Juan Soto to left field this year. I'm sure that'll be fun. I'm sure that'll be great. One of the big acquisitions I did talk about was Luis Robert from Chicago. You know, Robert kind of struggled a bit last year with the White Sox, but if he's healthy, he can get going. That's an under the radar guy for those of you in fantasy and betting and all that stuff to keep an eye on. He's got a lot of pop. He can play a good center field. It's a good pickup for them. Tyrone Taylor looks like he's going to get a lot of the reps in right field to start the year. Don't know what plan B is. And we talked about the designated hitters. Jared Young, Canadian, could be a swingman, you know, between Syracuse and New York. Then that's probably will go with some sort of Vientos, Beatty platoon at DH. But again, those guys can play the positions to get Lindor a day off, to get Bichette a day off. Freddie Peralta, I cannot believe Freddie Peralta got traded. That I did not see coming. Because every year we say, wow, the Brewers are going to sell, and the Brewers never sell, and they win the Central. And look at that. But Stearns got it done. You know, he got it done. Looking at the coaches, we talked about Carlos Mendoza, Troy Snicker, Brian's son, hitting coach. Timmy Leeper is going to be the third base coach, former Blue Jays first and third base coach. Danny Barnes, quality control coach. former relief pitcher, JP Arancibia. It's going to be their catching coach, which is interesting, back in the big leagues. So some former Blue Jays to keep an eye on there. And I quickly wanted to talk about the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees. So right now, to start the season, I'd be thinking it's Fried, Schittler, Will Warren, Ryan Weathers, probably flip those two, and probably Luis Gill. That's not bad, especially if Gill figures it out. I think that's pretty good. The two guys down here, they are waiting to be healthy and come back. And then obviously, I imagine Warren goes to the bullpen, Gill goes to the bullpen. I like Gill's stuff. I think Gill in a setup role would be good, or a middle relief role. But man, Rodon, Cole, Fried, Schlittler, I should say. Um, man, that's tough. If you're a Blue Jays fan, I'd be concerned about that. And then you had Ryan Weathers. If he's healthy, if he can stay healthy, he's had injury issues the past few years. That's going to be a problem for them. I'm just being honest. And again, consider the fact that the Yankees didn't have Garrett Cole last year, and they still won 94 games with an underperforming bullpen. So the bullpen is going to be another issue for them because you look at Bednar, Camilo Duvall, Fernando Cruz. It's going to be slim pickings when that bridge to Bednar comes. Unless Duvall figures it out, Tim Hill is a situational guy, Paul Blackburn, Ryan Yarbrough, they're long men. So yeah, they got to figure that out. Offensively, this team is exactly the same as last year. Austin Wells behind the plate, Rice and Goldschmidt at first, Jazz Chisholm at second base. And again, for the Mets fans that are angry about Bo Bichette, the Yankees fans are just as frustrated with Jazz, but they understand the bat. They understand what he can do. And I imagine Jazz is working hard trying to get second base down. Worst case, they could put him in the outfield. That's worst case. Ryan McMahon back for a full season with the Yankees after he got traded with Colorado from Colorado. Really helps their left side. I feel that he's going to have some decent offensive numbers too, especially with a short porch at Yankee Stadium. 20 to 25 home runs. And I know you're going to be like, well, thank you, Captain Obvious. You're going to see a lot of Oswaldo Cabrera and Jose Caballero at shortstop to start the year because Volpe's on the injured list. What do they do with Volpe defensively, though? That is an interesting question. What do they do if he's healthy? Cody Bellinger decided to come back to New York for a couple more years at least. And of course, we all know Bellinger's potential left, center, right first. Trent Grisham took the qualifying author. I'd be stunned if he could duplicate his 20 plus home runs that he had last year. And the greatest, well, it's 1A and 1B, but if he's healthy, Aaron Judge is a problem. And Giancarlo Stanton, Mr. I can't open a bag of chips, is going to be their designated hitter. His time, I would have to believe, is running out. I say it because, he can't play the field. He only wants to DH. He's getting paid a boatload of money. He's always injured. I think it's coming to an end, but that's just me. Another guy who I wonder if or when his time will be up is Booney. I love Booney. One of the good guys in the game, but I'm stunned he has made it this long. I'm truly, truly stunned. I really thought this is a conspiracy theory in me. The Don Mattingly took the Blue Jays job to wait around to see if Booney would get fired. And then when he figured out at the end of his deal that Booney was not getting fired, he went to Philadelphia. That's conspiracy, unconfirmed, but I really think Donnie Baseball wanted to be the Yankees manager. Again, not crazy, but not out of the realm of possibilities. But see what happens with Booney. I mean, the AL East is going to be good. Let's be honest. It's going to be really, really good. Um, World Baseball Classic starts this Saturday, Canada, playing at 11 o'clock on Sportsnet. That'll be good. Um, Always curious to see how well they progress, how far they get. But it's Dominican, it's US, it's Japan. That's to me what that the finals look like. It's one of those three teams. So it'll be fun. So this is going to conclude another edition of the Cardy Show. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you. And you can like and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Until then, we'll talk to you next week.